Hello there, my name is Louis Wieland, and for the last 30 years I have published the official relocation guides on Atlanta that are distributed by the First Multiple Listing Service of Atlanta, which is the third or fourth, I think third now, largest multiple listing service in the United States. They house all the listings for residential and more commercial listings. And they are expanding their area of service to Florida, Tennessee, Alabama, and points south and north and west. So stay tuned for that. Let's see. The website for them is, of course, agents use that site regularly. 60,000 different agents use the site regularly. The magazines that we publish are on that site. They're also on my site, AtlantaCommunityProfiles.com. They're packed with tons of information about Atlanta. They define the counties and the communities and have very interesting articles about the city. We are moving more and more to a commercial editorial environment. So check it out. I'm also a commercial realtor with KW Commercial. If I can help you with any of your commercial real estate needs, my email is louwieland@kw.com. So that being said, every week we interview community leaders, and Lynn Dempsey, the commissioner of the Georgia Real Estate Commission, is helping me, partnering with me on some shows. Lynn, welcome back to the show. Good to have you on the show. And our guest today is an interesting and very knowledgeable person, Chris Ahrenkiel. Let's pronounce your last name correctly. Executive VP of Selig Corporation. Welcome to the show, Chris. Great to have you.
Yeah, thank you, Lou. Glad to be here.
So Chris is quite an impressive background. He's Executive VP of the corporation, and he's focuses on right now he's working on the leasing of the 1105 West Peachtree, which is 675,000 square feet, which is also Atlanta's largest office building currently under construction. He also sits on the firm's investment committee and also serves in many boards of directors and in community and civic organizations. He came to Selig in 2018 after 11 years at Tishman Speyer, where he was Atlanta managing director, overseeing the firm's regional activities. Most recently, he was responsible for the development, leasing, and sales of 3 Atlanta Alliance Center, a 500,000 square foot trophy office development, which set an Atlanta sales record. He's on the board of the Atlanta Chamber and the Atlanta Commercial Board, and the advisory board of the Alliance Theater and other boards. And basically, Chris, it's great to have you on the show. I'll just give you a brief profile of Selig Corporation. They were founded in 1918 as a family-owned company with a portfolio of more than 15 million square feet of retail, industrial, mixed use, and other office properties throughout the Southeast. It's one of the premier real estate development companies in the country. So, guys, it's interesting to have you two together, two really very influential people in the commercial real estate and in the real estate industry. I wanted to have Chris on the show because he did a great presentation about their developments in Atlanta at a CCIM meeting recently, and I wanted to have everybody see that because it is a fantastic presentation, and we will show that in a minute. But one of the things that is interesting is the commission is available to help with commercial real estate and development. And Lynn, would you mind just talking a little bit about that focus, how the commission can help in commercial real estate, or do you focus mostly on residential, or how do you interact or potentially interact?
Lou, certainly interestingly, whether you're working and developing real estate to the extent that Chris is, and I must say that is impressive. Or you're selling a residential home. You basically have the same kind of real estate license. I mean, you are qualified the same way, and you go through the same testing, and you have to pass a test, and then you become a salesman, and then 3 years, and if you decide you want to go get an associate broker's license or a broker's license, you can do that. Typically, what Chris is doing is very, very advanced as far as the management of money, income streams, that sort of thing, and goes way past educationally what someone that's selling residential real estate or even dealing in apartments does. So we require a good bit of education and continuing education once you've gotten your license to continue with that. We are now proceeding with quite a bit more education, and our real estate commission is talking about where we are lacking in offering the kind of education needed to do more complicated things in real estate. So if someone is interested in what Chris is doing right now, you pretty much have to go to work with someone in the in his business. So, you know, we're exploring how we can be more helpful, and if someone's interested in commercial real estate, but we're also exploring how we might help someone like Chris to get someone that is more advanced in their education. We're talking to the university system, and nothing definite has happened. But let me say that Selig Corporation and someone like Chris has gone through a tremendously rigorous education themselves, and they typically belong to organizations that have taught them a whole lot about managing property and developing property. And, you know, he's not even just building property. He is involved in the management, the successful management of it. So there's so much to what he's doing. And I just admire him. Atlanta is so fortunate to have a company like his that is developing on this kind of scale.
Chris, I know your company is a leader and have basically in the industry and is really responsible for a lot of the Atlanta skyline. How would you comment on Lynn's desire to involve the commercial aspect of our business in more ways than maybe currently?
Yeah, and thank you for those kind comments. And yeah, Selig Enterprises were certainly much a big part of the Atlanta skyline, and also the civic and philanthropic community here. So we're really proud of that. But regarding the commercial designation, that's something one of the boards I'm on, the ACBR, Atlanta Commercial Board of Realtors, which is the largest commercial real estate organization actually in the country, that's based here right in Atlanta and has about 2,500 active members. We've been looking and working with Commissioner Dempsey's office, and we'll continue to do so to try to find some sort of commercial designation, because it is a different animal effectively if you want to do commercial stuff versus residential stuff. Just like I really wouldn't know how to write a residential contract, and it's not my specialty. I think it's best serving clients and owners and so forth if there is a designation. Now there is several different designations like the CCIM and SIOR and so forth that people get, but if there was like a secondary license that focuses on commercial, all kinds of facets of the business, from development to management to leasing to marketing or what have you, asset management, capital markets and so forth, that would, I think, serve the community well. So, there's, I think, maybe from this meeting, Commissioner Dempsey, myself and other people can continue that momentum to do that. But I will say that there is, through the ACBR, the Atlanta Commercial Board of Realtors, there is a tremendous amount of educational opportunities available, and they are focused obviously on commercial stuff. And our sister organization, the Atlanta Realtors, they focus on residential educational opportunities. And I think we can, and by the way, Commissioner Dempsey's office has been terrific in allowing continuing education credits that we and one of our entities, Capitas, which is the former Georgia Institute of Real Estate, apply for, and we're able to gain CE credits in the commercial segment because Commissioner Dempsey's office has allowed that. So that's a good step.
Well, great.
Thank you, Chris. And I would like to say that we just recently have had two very important appointments to our board of commissioners. One being Cedric Matheny, who works with Dallas Smith, the largest minority contractor in Atlanta, and also Deanne Golden, who is a former president of the Atlanta Board of Realtors. So I think with these appointments, and we really appreciate the wisdom of the governor in putting them on our board, each for 5-year terms at least, then we're going to be able to understand our situation better, and we're going to be able to reach out and communicate better. So I think that's going to be very helpful as well.
So we have talked a lot at the Atlanta Commercial Board about the future of office. In fact, there was a meeting the other day, last week, about it. And before we get into your presentation, Chris, what is your overall just macro paradigm on the future of the office, commercial office space?
Yeah, I have some pretty strong feelings about it. I try to take, I'm a commercial developer and office developer, and so I naturally would have some biases, but I try to take those out of it, and I listen to the community leaders. I listen to real estate leaders at corporations and sort of what their sentiment is. And I think, we're still in this sort of really, really tight labor market that is showing signs of weakening, where the employee has leverage and the employee and their friends are able to work from home some of the time. The most often scenario currently is 3 days a week in the office, 2 days out. Those 3 days tend to be Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. We think in Atlanta, we're maybe 60% back to the office, which is equivalent of being in the office Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and working from home Monday and Friday. But employers, if you talk about the sentiment of, for example, I'm on a board that's got 160 of the largest company CEOs on that board. And maybe 2 years ago, the sentiment was, yeah, we're trying to figure out our real estate footprint. We're trying to figure out, we want to keep our employees. We want to keep them happy. So we want to give them flexibility. So we are very uncertain about the future of the office. A year ago, it was like, okay, it's time to come back to the office. We'll mandate 3 days a week. Some did more, some did less. Smaller companies often did 5 days a week. My company, as a real estate developer, we are encouraging everybody to be in the office 5 days a week. So trying to lead by example. And so a year ago, there was a mandate to come back a few days a week, 2-3 days a week, and people didn't really abide by that. And now it's like the sentiment feels to be, guys, it's time to come back. The people that are going to get promoted are the ones we see. The people that have long-term career aspirations are the ones coming back to the office. And there's a softening labor market. If you read the newspaper, every day somebody's laying off a lot of people, 1,000 here, 10,000 there, versus, 2 years ago was everybody was hiring 1,000 here, 5,000, 10,000 there. And so if you start to take effect of all these layoffs, at some point, that's going to hit the employment numbers. The employees are going to have less leverage, and the employer who 90-something% of the employer, so the CEOs, want their employees in the office. They feel like it's more productive. It builds community. It gives opportunities for mentorship for the next generation. And I think they're going to start, I don't want to say winning, but people are going to start coming back to the office a lot more. That being said, there will be some flexibility, I think, given Fridays are generally, Friday afternoons are probably going to be somewhat empty in offices, which is not unlike what it was pre-pandemic in a lot of cases. But I think the office has a place. I do think trophy office, the ones that are most heavily amenitized, and the data supports this, are the ones that are full, having record prices for sales, record rents. And then also community-oriented projects. Those are the ones, like we have a project on the west side of Atlanta called The Works, or anything that's close to a Beltline. So those projects that feel like you're part of some community, those outperform as well. So those are full, they're getting record rents. And then sort of there's this middle product, the A-, B, Class B product. It's suffering a lot, and there may be some loan defaults and so forth, but it's like a tale of two cities where stuff's either super hot and then some stuff's going to come back to the lenders.
So the presentation that you gave at the CCIM meeting recently was outstanding, and you're certainly in a great position to provide insight into the skyline and what's happening, what the future holds. But your company has a distinct footprint, and so I think we ought to just turn the show to your presentation, which is fascinating, and let everybody get a chance to see what just the CCIM members had an opportunity to see.
Perfect. I'm going to try to screen share, and are you able to see it?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I
Okay,
do.
perfect. All right. Well, thank you again for having me on the show. And first, okay. So can you see the next screen, which has sort of a skyline?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
So you sort of mentioned Selig Enterprises. We are the oldest commercial real estate company in Atlanta. We are also, by some measures, the largest commercial real estate company in Atlanta, heavily focused on office space. Multifamily development's big for us as well, but we also have a significant industrial and retail holding throughout mainly the metro region. We have a few buildings outside of the metro in the southeast, but that's primarily it. But very proud and very, very deep in Atlanta. This is an aerial view of Midtown looking north, and Midtown sort of divided into multiple micro markets. So to the north, so to the top left of your screen, you'll see a cluster of buildings called Atlantic Station, which has a unique kind of mixed use feel. To the south, you've got Tech Square. To the east, you have the Ponce City Market area. To the west, you have the Upper West Side, where we have the Works. And then you have sort of the core business district, which is outlined in the slide in blue, if you can see that. The yellow buildings are the buildings that Selig owns or has developed. And the green parcels are land parcels that we own for future development. So Midtown, for those of you who don't know, it is by so many measures the hottest submarket in the country. And it certainly is the hottest submarket in Atlanta. And we control about a third of the remaining developable land in the hottest submarket in the country. So we're really happy with that. In the center of this, you see a building that we just finished that's got a big G on it, which I think you can probably guess what that stands for, but that is Google's new Southeastern headquarters, effectively. And it's a roughly 700,000 square foot building. It's fully leased, mainly to Google. We have a big top 10 law firm, Smith, Gambrell, and Russell, that took 5 floors before Google took the rest of the building. So that was a big economic development win for the city and certainly for Selig Enterprises. So just as a history, just in the last 15 years, we've developed over 2.5 million square feet of office, 600 hotel rooms, 1.6 million square feet of residential, which is a lot of units, and we have a lot more under construction. And that amounts to over $3 billion worth of development just in, like I said, about the last 15 years. One of the projects I mentioned earlier, which is one of these sort of adaptive reuse project on the west side of Atlanta, it's called The Works. And it's where we took an old warehouse district that amounts to about 80 acres, which we owned and developed 78 years ago. Let that sink in. And we developed it as industrial space for a pencil manufacturing company, chemical company, a few other companies. And then we just kept buying land around it, and we amassed 80 acres. And to put that into perspective, that's the size of Avalon and Alpharetta. It's 20 acres larger than the Battery in Cobb County. So this is a huge community that we're creating. We're curating out of an old warehouse district. So imagine old warehouse buildings, but they have this character of old, authentic brick, which you don't manufacture anymore. And we cut big windows, so these steel windows into them. It becomes this loft feeling environment. And we put a lot of retail. We have more retail in the first phase than we have office space. And excuse me, retail creates that sort of amenity base for the office tenants. We have restaurants like Fox Brothers Barbecue. We have a Mexican restaurant. We have Atlanta's #1 food hall called Chattahoochee Food Works, which has 31 different food stations. We've got a entertainment spot called Your Third Spot that's just doing extraordinarily well. And those are all amenities for office tenants. So office tenants want to be in an environment that feels cool. They feel like they're part of a community and they're part of this. And their employees have amenities they can walk to. There's energy. There's music playing throughout the complex. So it's a really cool development, very different from what I'm used to developing, but this is also equally cool. This is a rendering of what the first phase looks like. We're about to finish some apartments on the left. They'll be open up in October. And then kind of at the very top of your screen, you see additional warehouse buildings. Those are buildings we're starting to plan conversions on to turn those into more office space, some residential space, and more retail space as well. So our kind of trophy asset that we just finished is 1105 West Peachtree. It's the building I mentioned earlier that has Google in it. It also has Smith Kimbrell Russell, the law firm. But what I'll say, there's a couple unique amenities I'm going to touch on a little bit more later, but that make this building special. Not just is it architecturally significant with the architecture, but also the amenity base we have in that building are unmatched by any other office building in the city. And that's what tenants are looking for. I want to talk about MIDTOWN for just a second. So why is MIDTOWN the hottest market in Atlanta and by some measures the hottest market in the country? So you've kind of have this confluence of the best of everything Atlanta has to offer. You've got a really highly educated residential base there. Almost 80% of the residents in MIDTOWN have a bachelor's degree, so 77% of them. And that's significantly higher than Atlanta's average, which is 52%, and then the US average, which is under 40%. We have a lot of students. Georgia Tech is in MIDTOWN, which is such a great asset for us. But in addition to that, we have within 5 miles, we're sort of to the south, to the east, to the north. We have Emory University. We have the HBCUs. So 4 of the top HBCUs in the country, Morehouse, Spelman, Morehouse School of Medicine, and Clark Atlanta are located within just a few miles from MIDTOWN. And that's a terrific educated employee base for a lot of corporations here. We have the Terry campus in Buckhead of the University of Georgia, and so many other schools like SCAD, which is a different type. It's a more liberal arts college, but it's in MIDTOWN as well. So students, you have culture, you have things from the Fox Theater to the Varsity to Piedmont Park, which is the city's sort of largest park. We've got the West Side Park, which technically is a little bit larger, but it's not quite as activated. We have bike lanes. There's 3 miles. There's 11 more miles coming of bike lanes just in MIDTOWN. So it's bikeable. We have 3 MARTA stations. So public transit is in MIDTOWN. We have new office space, which is important because the way you design office space today is different than the way you design office space 30 years ago. mainly being more kind of community engaging. You have more restaurants, you have more energy to the street, versus in 20, 30, 40 years ago, you designed trophy buildings as being sort of like gated community. Everything's on the inside. It's sort of, from the outside, it doesn't amount to really creating a sense of community like things like developments do today. So those are some of the reasons why Midtown is so popular. This is a really interesting slide. I'm going to sort of fly through, but this is an aerial of Midtown in 2005, so 18 years ago, and you have a lot of vacant land. You can't see my mouse, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
You can't see. Okay, so you've got some buildings on 14th Street, and you have the Federal Reserve, and there's a lot of vacant land, more vacant land than there was developed land. So in 2000, and this is just what we did. In 2008, we finished 1010 Midtown, which is a high-rise condominium building. By 2010, we delivered a large mixed-use complex with 700,000 feet of office, where PwC has their Southeastern offices, Boston Consulting Group, Cypher Shaw, and many other companies, the Lowe's Hotel, the condos above the Lowe's, and some conference space. 2013, we built a luxury apartment called 77 12th Street. Then on the heels of that, we built, by 2015, 60 11th Street, another multifamily development. And then we have 1105 West Peachtree, which is a 3-tower mixed-use development that, the office building be the major portion of that Google took. So here is 1105. I mentioned the architecture is significant. If you drive up and down the connector or through Midtown, you see this building. If you follow any of the drone photographers on Instagram or Facebook, they love, because of all the lighting that we can do with this building, they love shooting this building. And we can light it in over 1 million different colors. And we sort of do community things. If it's Breast Cancer Awareness Month, the building is pink. If it's for Christmas, we light it. For Hanukkah, we light it. For the Braves, when they're in the championship or have major games, they ask us to light the building in Braves colors. We like the dogs, the Georgia Bulldogs, so support them. Yeah, with red, and you can't light black, but it's effectively red and black. Many times when we win some football games. So that's a pretty cool amenity. It's very noticeable, distinct to Atlanta. But if you look to the left of your screen, you have two things that are unique to our building that some buildings have, but not to the amount that we have them. So when you walk into most office buildings, you have what you call a trophy lobby that's museum-like. It's nice, high-end marble, granite, finishes, terrazzo that just almost serve no purpose. It's a walk through or pass through element to get from the front door to your passenger elevators to take you to your floor. 1105 has a more hospitality inspired lobby where we have that trophy element of the lobby with the concierge and so forth, but then it morphs into a lounge and morphs into a bar with a full service restaurant. We have conference tables that employees of the building can work at. So they want to get out of their office space and want a more energetic, bar-like environment, a sports bar feel, drink, eat here. They can have their Monday morning meetings here. Hopefully they're not drinking Monday morning, but we also have a cabin-like feel, but it's just, it's a very usable area. And then the second amenity that we have is this Sky Plaza, which is almost 1 acre. It's in the sky. It's 90 feet elevated. It actually caps our parking deck. And it's got intentionally all these different neighborhoods from this large lawn area that you can have tenant events there. We can host yoga events out there, farmers markets. We've had weddings out there, to little sort of niches where people can have one-on-one conversations outdoors. And when you walk out of an office building into a park, your blood pressure drops. You feel different. It creates different types of thought patterns in your mind. And it's kind of that third spot. So you have for an employee where they can work in a different type of environment if they just need to get out of the environment. So then we have every other amenity you would expect in a trophy office building, from a fitness center, concierge, bike storage, maintenance, valet, conference fitness. I think I mentioned some of those, and many other amenities. that you would expect. We have two, I think, our best amenities are always your rent-paying tenants, so Smith Gambrell, which is the law firm, and then Google, which everybody knows who Google is, but their Southeastern headquarters, we're very, very proud to have them. So on my intro slide that showed the aerial of Midtown and the green slides that are future development sites of Midtown, we sort of programmed 4 sites that are 4 next potentially developments in Midtown, and they all have slightly different characteristics based on what people are looking for. So in this map, the center here has the Google building, 1105 West Peachtree. To the right of that, we have this project called the Exchange, which is like a community oriented project where I'm going to have a ton of retail space. And it'll feel very collaborative. It's next to this place called the Art Walk, which is a linear park that the Midtown Alliance, the community improvement district for Midtown, is creating. So it'll feel almost like a Beltline property. So that's a very unique property. Then 2 blocks to the east of that, I've got a site for 1125 Peachtree, and that'll be a vertical mixed use tower with some office, residential, maybe even a hotel. Directly south of the Google building, I've got a building that'll probably mimic the architecture of 1105, just to have some continuation of development, but it will be very green. You see a lot of plants growing out of those balconies. And then at the top of your screen, we have a site that's our highest density site, where if there's a large economic development deal needing over 1 million square feet, we've got a site that can accommodate that. That's on the interstate, 7585. It has over 300,000 daily cars. So the visibility on that site is tremendous. And I'm not going to walk through all these, but I'm also planning a building at the Works. So this is the project on the west side of Atlanta where this will be, it doesn't feel trophy because you don't want it to feel trophy in a kind of adaptive reuse environment. You want it to feel kind of funky and cool. So we've established this, building with a lot of outdoor space, balcony space, but it'll engage with the community at the Works. And so I think that's my 15 minutes, but I'm happy to take any questions, or we can keep going. I'm happy to talk about the other sites that we have as well.
Love that W.
It's cool. It's the Works W. So it's structural, so it's got purpose. It creates common space underneath it, so it engages with the community, which I mentioned I think is important. And it looks kind of cool.
What a great tour. That's neat.
Thank you.
Great presentation. I loved the presentation, and I hope you guys can work together on some ways to improve the licensing and education between the for commercial agents, and involvement between the Georgia Real Estate Commission and Selig and other commercial agents. What do you look? How many square feet do you forecast having over the next say 5 to 10 years in the Midtown and down? Are you downtown or just Midtown?
We have a lot of property in Midtown. We are bullish on downtown long term, and there is a lot of things I think that need to happen in Midtown first before downtown sort of gets its momentum. But there's a couple of nodes. We own a lot of parking lots in downtown, and so parking lots are great because they're clean development sites. You don't have to tear down anything. But the demand currently is in Midtown. So we're certainly going to follow the demand, and downtown is going to get some new developments with the Centennial Yards project, which is adjacent to both the stadiums downtown. You've got Summerhill on the east side, you've got South downtown on the south side, and then Underground Atlanta. So you have 4 large redevelopments that are happening. And for the sake of competition, which drives down prices, we would unlikely play in that market until it's a little bit more supply constrained. Now, Midtown on the other side, I showed the other side of town. I showed sort of how densified Midtown has become over the last 15 years, just with that super block that Selig has developed. There is becoming a scarcity of sites in Midtown, and when you have less competition that can go, it's a healthier market. It's easier to get financing for office buildings. Right now, it's difficult in general to get financing for anything, especially office buildings. But that's going to come back, especially in a market like Atlanta, where you have a lot of people moving here. We get about 100,000 people a year that move to the region, and 60,000 jobs. And so if you're in a Detroit, you're not gaining employees or workers or employers rather. People are sort of leaving, come to markets like Atlanta, where you've got a great, climate, you've got a relatively low cost of living, you have a better, diverse, educated talent pool. You've got the airport where you can get pretty much anywhere in the 80% of the country is covered within a 2-mile direct flight from Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport. And there's so many different attributes we have. And so to answer your question, development in Midtown, I think from an office perspective, in the next 5 years, you're probably not going to have that many developers go. There's one building under construction that's 520,000 feet that Portman's doing. They'll deliver in that time frame, and you'll probably get 1 or 2 other buildings that deliver. So I'll say maybe 1.5 million square feet. Compare that to 2 years ago, we had 4.5 million square feet of office space under construction in Midtown, and pretty much all of it is leased. So that's a good scenario. But just because it's so difficult to attain financing right now, and the office market there's uncertainty, so you don't know exactly what the demand's going to be. It's going to be hard to, it takes 3 years to build these buildings. So if you're not under construction in 2 years, you're not going to deliver in 5 years. And it takes another 1.5 years to plan them and permit them before you start construction. So it's really a 5-year cycle for these skyscrapers.
One last question. I know you've been very generous with your time, both of you guys. And have you factored into, or how have you factored in logistics, just traffic, getting around and getting into town and out of town, et cetera?
That's a great question. So traffic, if you're looking to have a traffic-free commute, this isn't the right city for you, or any demand sort of market isn't the right city for you. But we do have 3 MARTA stations. So a lot of the companies that have taken space here, that includes Google with over 500,000 square feet, which is a giant, one of the biggest deals ever done in Atlanta, along with Microsoft, which Dallas Smith did, and his team, including Cedric Lynn, who you mentioned earlier. But those are giant footprints, and they're trying to bring sort of a culture of, you ride your bike to work, or you take mass transit to work. They incentivize their employees to take alternate commuting patterns. And I think just human nature, at some point, if you sit in traffic too long, you're going to be like, well, maybe I could take I can go to work a different way. Now, the residential market in Midtown is hot. We have 4,700, I think, units under construction currently in Midtown. That's, maybe 6,000 beds. So 6,000 people will live here. So in theory, if you live here and you work here, you're, hopefully not going to take a car to work, but you could take your, the scooter. The scooters are back. If you guys have seen them on the streets, disappeared for a couple of years. Again, MARTA is a really good option. I took it to, I went to the Taylor Swift concert. I took MARTA. It was a good experience. It was easy. It was inexpensive. I didn't have to pay for parking. It's very, it's on time. I think more of the younger generation, who doesn't all want to own cars, is gonna take alternate transportation. And then the bike lanes that the Midtown Alliance is implementing. I mentioned 11 miles. That over the next several years is going to come to Midtown. That's going to create a safer environment for people to take something other than their car to work.
I lived in Midtown Manhattan for 10 years, and it's a sea of yellow cabs in Midtown Manhattan. You very rarely see anybody driving around. You envision something like that happening here in Midtown, Atlanta, and downtown?
Yeah, I mean, probably not the cabs, because Uber is sort of, we don't have we may have a cab union, but I don't know that there is one, but it's pretty much Ubers. But I really do think people will, at some point, if you get frustrated with traffic, like a lot of people are, and you have really great living options in Midtown, and you can work in Midtown. And by the way, it's the same situation in Buckhead and downtown. They're all getting more residential units, and a higher percentage of the people that move here live in apartments rather than, you know, the kind of white picket fence in the suburbs, even though that's still popular once people start families, but people are starting families later and so forth. So I think if you have the opportunity to live close to your office, you know, that's an ideal scenario. And and that's probably another reason why Midtown is so hot, because you can't just live and work here. You can also eat here. You've got a mile to the east is the Beltline with Pont City Market, and to the west you have the West Side. You could Uber to, or you could take a little a scooter to as well. So.
Okay, well, thanks very much, Chris. What a great presentation. I appreciate that very much. And I guess if they would like to learn more about your company, they can just go to Selig.com, right? And you have
SeligEnterprises.com.
SeligEnterprises.com.
Yeah.
And thanks very much, Lynn, for participating in the show again. I appreciate your involvement in our program, and hopefully
What an edge.
keep
So,
the
I mean,
dialogue going.
it's great, man. That was super.
Thanks very much.
Thank you guys for hosting me, and Commissioner, very nice to spend time with you and Lou. Thanks for putting this together, and good to see you at so many of the community events that we have.
Yes, sir. Thank you very
We'll
much.
get together for lunch, the three of us, one day soon, and get better acquainted. Thank you very much for watching. And next week, we'll be interviewing Michael Bull, president and founder of Bull Realty, one of the larger commercial real estate brokerage firms in town. Thank you very much for watching. Have a nice day.